Not a lot of time, so I gotta make moves.
Hi, this is Jean Fenter reporting for the North Coast Courier. Today we're at the Galley in Ballito, where we'll be meeting local musician Chuck Bowden, who has been around the block, both in South Africa and in the UK, playing genres like rock, metal and grunge. Let's find out more from the local artist on what the scene has been like. So Chuck, take us through a bit about your history. I understand you started playing the drums around 14.
Yeah.
But before that, what actually inspired you to get into a life of music? Where did it all start?
So I grew up in the Eastern Cape. I went to a boarding school, Graham College, and I met a friend there whose dad was with Ballito, and he brought this steel string guitar to the boarding school. And he started playing around with it, and I picked it up, and the bug bit. And I just started teaching myself, and then started trying to write some songs, and it kind of escalated from there. Bugged my parents until they eventually conceded and said, all right, okay, fine, we'll get this kid a guitar. So I got my little nylon string, and I started strumming away.
You gotta stay hey, baby, just another star tonight, and I'm not here for lecture.
And it kind of progressed from there.
Yeah. So obviously at 14, still in school, you were building yourself, learning music, figuring out the instruments.
Yeah.
While in school and figuring all that out, did you complete school? Did you
Yes, I did. I got my matric and got the exemption. I was going to study graphic design of all things. But then the band thing just sort of took off, so I went on tour, so it was kind of shelved, and it just, never really got further than that until much later in life.
From what I've read so far, you've been heavily invested in grunge, metal and rock. What were some of the influences you had at the time?
Sure, now you're taking me back. Initially it started off was U2. That was the big one for me, and then Guns N' Roses came on the scene, and that was life-changing for me to hear someone with such vocal range and pushing the boundaries of what could be done on a mic, and just good songwriting, and the grungy guitars as well. I know they were considered hard rock, but they really did have a really nice tone to them. So my first band was Crimson Rose. That was a hybrid of Nirvana slashed with Guns N' Roses. So we did fairly well. We did a tiny little demo, and we sent it off to Barney Simon. He used to have the Barney Simon show back in the 90s, and it got airplay on his Battle of the Bands. So we didn't even know. My friends were phoning me up and freaking out. They said, "Oh, your Nirvana song's on." I'm like, "We don't have a Nirvana song." Turns out my drummer sent off this demo that we did in the garage, and it was, I think it was in week 5 by the time we actually got to hear it on radio, which was, it was amazing to actually to hear yourself on national radio.
Did things pick up for you guys after the song aired on radio for the first time?
Yes, absolutely. We started getting a lot more gigs, a lot more exposure. The metal scene was just taking off in Joburg at the time, so we just started having, I think a lot of the bands were more intrigued by what we were doing at the time, because we didn't really fit in the cliques, if you like, so we were kind of doing our own thing. And I got approached by an Urban Assault guitarist, and he said, why don't you come and try out for this new project I'm doing? Because he needed someone with a bit more sort of versatility, because at the time I think all the metal bands were just, they were, just kind of screaming into the mics, and because that was the aggression, and that's the style of the vocal, so he wanted to try something a little different. So at the time we didn't really have a name for it, but I think they called it new metal later on in the 90s. So.
Given that it was so underground at the time, if you guys were to have performed, how large of a crowd did you actually draw?
It was fairly large. I mean, it started off small. You're talking about 10 or 20 people, but like die-hard fans that would follow. Remember, we didn't have social media back in those days, so it was all word of mouth and handmade posters, and that was pretty much it. So it was difficult to generate interest. So we relied heavily on that aspect of it. Tell your friends, and it slowly started building. And then initially the bands started competing against each other. And we sat down the one day with Mark Bass from Metamorphosis and said to him, why are we fighting each other? We should join forces, you know what I mean? There's such a small pocket of people that are into this genre of music. We should expand and work together. So that's where the idea of the tour was born. So we tested, like I said, the borders with the Black Winter Tour, and it was a great success. You know, we noticed the crowds were small, and then each venue we played got bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually it was about 100, 200 plus people, and it was mayhem. It was just moshing and stage diving and all sorts of craziness. I mean, there's some of the stories I could tell you about that tour. It's probably for another show.
I see a little silhouette of a man. Scaramouche, really do the fandango. Thunderbolts are lightning, very, very frightening me. I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me. He's just a poor boy from a poor family. Sparing his life for the smallest tragedy.
Like you said, music halls.
It always does, yeah.
Yeah, so after that, did you start performing solo? Did you reform a group?
Yeah,
What did you do going forward?
So when I got back here, pretty much wrapped everything up. All the music gear was in the garage for at least about three years. And then we started going out in the local circuit here and watching the bands and seeing some of the cover bands. And my wife at the time then said, you know what, these guys, they need some inspiration, they need some competition. And obviously, she thought I was the best there is, so it's great to have her on board. But I thought, you know what, let's just pick the guitar up and just do it for fun. Just play some covers, just, go play some of the venues and have a beer or two and just have a release from the day-to-day work and the kids and the stress. And yeah, it was great.
I'm winning, 'cause I give you all of me, and you give me